I'm Andrew Levine, the CEO of Coinos Group, inventors of Coinos, the blockchain with no fees.
And I'm Adam, founder of GFAM, a platform that completely decentralizes earnings for content creators.
And this is our decentralized future, where we talk about issues and interview people on the cutting edge of technology to help prepare you for a more decentralized future.
My name is Michael O'Rourke. I have been in the crypto space back since 2013 when it was really Bitcoin, not blockchain or crypto, to be honest. And my background is in iOS engineering, and in late 2016 started writing some smart contracts on Ethereum. We used a infrastructure service at the time to help make it really easy to build applications, because most blockchain developers don't want to run an Ethereum full node. They want to focus on their applications. So there's a bunch of third-party services that help out with this. The most famous one, the most well-known one, being Infura. And as 2017 rolled along, we saw the importance of Infura and the reliance that Ethereum had on Infura, where upwards of 80 to 90% of all of Ethereum's traffic was going through one service provider. And really all they're doing is running these full nodes to provide what we call the RPC, which is just kind of things like getting the balances and transactions and these sorts of things. And we really saw that importance and started thinking about this problem of how can this be decentralized in a way that makes sense. One of our core thesis is that we think we're going to live in a world with thousands of blockchains in the future. And we kind of set to design this protocol, which we called Pokt Network. That is what I've been working on since then. So going on almost 5 years at this point, working on this problem.
I think we certainly agree with your thesis. I mean, that's why we started by building what we call the Coinos blockchain framework, which is a framework for building blockchains. So the idea is to make it 10 times easier for people to build new blockchains and enable them to define whatever behaviors they want by simply writing and uploading smart contracts written in the programming languages that they already know. That's basically the central premise behind the blockchain framework as opposed to the mainnet. And so agree with your thesis. I think it's interesting. So I think as far as more lay people go, the reason why your service is so important is because I think ordinary people, they don't realize when they're using a blockchain, what they're really using is API calls. They are connecting to that blockchain through pipes, and in between them and that blockchain is an RPC node that is either owned by an organization or like controlled by an organization, but you guys are looking to offer a solution that is a decentralized solution to that problem. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, basically we have these Web3 protocols, right, that are being serviced via Web2 solutions. And the best way that I could kind of give an example is actually Coinbase when they first started. And the original idea of Coinbase was actually having this Bitcoin wallet connected to your Bitcoin full node. And Brian Armstrong decided to say, hey, you know what? Running a Bitcoin full node is a bit of a pain. How about we do that for the users so that they don't actually have to do that? And that was actually the moment that Coinbase started to really grow. And then that's when people started asking, hey, can I buy Bitcoin? How do I get it? And that's kind of how they evolved into what they are today. And kind of the moral of that story is we kind of took this kind of, sovereign first architecture and basically put the Web2 architecture that we live in today. And, we've kind of taken the approach that let's bring this back to kind of that, famous kind of meme or saying in Bitcoin, which is verify, don't trust. So we have this kind of decentralized network where you have incredibly strong guarantees on the data that you're receiving, that you're, when I look at my balance on my MetaMask wallet, for example, we trust that information because I trust the provider, Infura, whoever it might be, that's giving me that information. But in a world where you have an actually decentralized network providing this information, we have to provide some stronger guarantees on the integrity of that data, which is kind of has been a fun problem to solve, if you will. But you nailed it perfectly.
One of the things that I found interesting about your approach is that I'm familiar with some similar projects in the space, but my impression of them is that they are trying to offer more full stack solutions to the problem, whereas, which I think looks better from a marketing perspective, but is actually infinitely harder to implement. Whereas what I liked about what I saw about your project was that you seem to be very focused on a specific part of the stack, that being the RPC node. I'm curious to hear whether that's accurate, how intentional that decision was, and why that was the focus of your project.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. I think that is accurate. After a couple years of thinking through the problem, we kind of landed on the substrate of, or the primitive of, a full node. In the end, it doesn't matter what abstraction, layer 2, bridge, index, doesn't matter. In the end, they need, these things need data from full nodes. And the main way that they get that data is through this RPC API. So, ETH underscore get balance as an example. That'll give you your balance of ETH, right? That's a core function on the Ethereum RPC, right? So yeah, we landed on that, and you're right that we're just really purely focused on this one problem. We solved it in a very generic way, which allows for greater flexibility in the future as a platform and in a protocol. But really fundamentally, we're really focused on one thing, and that's providing the most, really by several magnitudes, cheapest infrastructure and the most reliable and redundant infrastructure in the world. And I'd venture to say that we're quite literally both when you compare us to our centralized colleagues, if you will.
To me, the problem that you're trying to solve sounds similar to, and you're more technical than me, you're an engineer, I assume, but to my lay ears, this problem sounds very similar in nature to the kind of Filecoin problem, to the problem of you want to incentivize people in a decentralized manner who are doing something over there that's not on the blockchain. And blockchains are a really good way of incentivizing people in a decentralized manner, but they're also incredibly expensive and redundant, and they're generally not a good solution to a problem of if cheapness is an objective. So is there like a core innovation at the heart of your stack or something that allows you to solve this problem? Is it a blockchain solution? How do you offer decentralization and low costs? Because if anybody's ever heard of, the Trinity or the trilemma, right? These are two things that are believed to be almost incompatible.
Yeah, so there are trade-offs. To be clear, I believe they'll be mitigated in the future, which I'll get into in a second. But Pokt is its own blockchain. We're built on the Tendermint Cosmos SDK stack, if you're familiar with that. And you mentioned how you guys are doing, allowing people to deploy their own blockchains. We were very bought into that vision when we first really came across Cosmos and how they've launched and built what they've done. But we are a very focused middleware protocol. So we sit in between an application. If I'm an end user that's, aping into Loot or some DeFi, or NFT or something like that, and the blockchain that application is built on. So let's say Ethereum. We sit in between there, and what Pokt does, all it does is route, the requests of that user to the full node that's meant to do the work, meaning, showing my balance or sending a right transaction to claim, some, nth loot derivative as an example, right? And you mentioned Filecoin and these types of, we're in the same kind of sphere, in the sense where But we're actually quite complementary kinds of projects, actually, interestingly enough. So projects like Filecoin, Arweave, SIA, Storage, they incentivize storage, which is great. There's really a big problem with incentivizing people to store information, particularly blockchain information, because it's more ephemeral. If people stop running a blockchain, well, then no one has any data to there may not be anywhere to grab some data that existed 2 years ago or something like that. What we incentivize is where they incentivize the storage. We incentivize the reading of that information. So it's actually very complementary, and these are the kinds of projects that we're actually really excited to work with. In fact, we're launching Arweave support in the next couple of weeks, which is really exciting. But yeah, that's kind of where we sit, right? And then there's kind of like another layer, which is the indexing layer, which I won't get into, but we kind of have this stack of decentralized infrastructure that's kind of forming across many different kinds of protocols. And Pokt, fundamentally, it's a two-sided marketplace. You have people running nodes, full nodes on the Pokt side. They have to buy and stake our native cryptocurrency Pokt to participate in the network and have the right to earn revenue. And on the demand side of the network, you have applications that buy and stake Pokt to pay for the service. So instead of paying a monthly fee like you would a traditional SaaS business, you're actually, and this is what's really just in my opinion, world-changing, is the developers actually turning their infrastructure into an asset for the first time. So they buy this cryptocurrency, it doesn't get burned, it doesn't get used as fees, but you are staking it to remove it out of circulation and pay for the service. As a result, you have an asset that gives you a right to the infrastructure and the throughput of the network, which is a very different model than what people are used to, and is really what allows us to say how much cheaper we are in this respect. Let's
use our company, our project as an example. That makes a lot of sense. We're going to launch our mainnet. We're going to have lots of people who want to run nodes. The nodes are going to be really accessible as far as hardware is concerned. We're going to, I don't know if I said, we're obviously going to run nodes ourselves. What would participating in Pokt look like? Are you saying that if we hold and stake that token, we won't need to pay transaction fees for the RPC calls that are made?
So not the transaction fees. We sit completely outside of your network.
Right. No, but your transaction fees for your network.
Yeah, so there are, we transfer value through inflation. We're not really a transactional cryptocurrency in that sense. There are transaction fees, but they are very minimal. What they do help you with is, instead of you as protocol builders having to run all these infrastructure nodes, these full nodes to provide access to your users, you can offload that to a service like Pokt, basically. And just completely removes the need for you to have to even worry about the infrastructure of your network, because you have a reliable and redundant set of people who already are running full nodes in Pokt today. So I'll give you an example. We recently launched with a protocol called Fuse. It's a small blockchain. They have a couple applications that are doing pretty well, and they started driving about, I don't know, 5 to 10 million requests a day through the network. And when they launched, we had about 100 to 200 people in our network running Fuse nodes, which is pretty interesting. But once they started driving this traffic, it immediately ramped up to over 2,000 node runners running Fuse nodes, because they are incentivized to do so. So you have this nice property where the more you use Pokt, the more redundant and reliable it becomes, because more people are incentivized to run more nodes to provide this service. But fundamentally, any applications that are built on Coinos, for example, would be able to use Pokt to build their applications, for example.
That's very cool and interesting from our perspective, and definitely seems like something that could provide a lot of value. I mean, my initial response is, well, we're going to need to run, we're going to need to run nodes ourselves anyway. We can't simply trust Pokt network, but even so, more nodes is better. And that fuse example that you gave is pretty compelling to think that, like, okay, so when we launch our mainnet, maybe we'll have 100 nodes, but 1,000 would be better. 2,000 would be better. And so using your service to bootstrap that number and then benefiting from the growth through our holding of the token itself, it seems like a very good use of blockchain and decentralized incentives. You said that the cost of transactions is basically obfuscated, is obscured in inflation, which is exactly how we're doing the feeless. That's how you have to implement feelessness on a decentralized network. So we have our mechanism that we call the mana system. It's based off of what we implemented on the Steem blockchain. I'm curious to hear more about how you regulate the cost of transactions and the exact mechanism by which you obscure those fees in token inflation.
Yeah, so instead of paying, so our fees are kind of relatable to kind of SaaS infrastructure fees, right? So I pay $200 a month to get, I don't know, 1 million requests a day. So really the innovation that we've made is, instead of paying, $200 a month, why don't you pay $1,800 upfront with a cryptocurrency that you can keep and stake and hold. What we've done there is instead of having this sunk cost, you have this asset. And through that, effectively what that means is the longer someone uses Pokt, the closer their cost basis reaches zero. After a few months, they're already in the black. And if they choose to stop using Pokt, for example, they can go back and sell that asset that they had previously purchased, for example, meaning they got net free infrastructure, which is a pretty powerful concept. What we do on the reward side is, instead of giving some static block reward, not associated with anything other than an arbitrary set of numbers, in Pokt, the rewards are directly based on the usage of the network. So as an example, if these are not real numbers, but if I'm a node and I did 1 million requests, well, then that gives me the right to mint 1 million Pokt, which is really interesting because it's significantly more efficient than kind of static block rewards, and really allows the market of nodes to grow within the bounds of how much traffic we're actually doing at any given point in time. So for example, what that means is, today we're doing 40 million requests. A couple months ago, we were doing about 5 million. The nodes went down. The number of nodes in the network went down because there wasn't enough traffic to sustain kind of the revenue. So we kind of have this kind of self-regulating marketplace on the supply side that is allows them to capture value through minting Pokt instead of direct fees.
As the holder of Pokt, do I have to stake those tokens in order to take advantage of those low cost or free transactions? Or do I just buy and I just hold the liquid tokens and now I can?
Yeah, so you'll buy and stake it once. You don't have to do any other fees on chain. So we have this concept of cost of coordination. So if I'm building a set of smart contracts on Ethereum, I'm subject to the fee market of Ethereum. I'm subject to all the miners that are participating in Ethereum, and I'm subject to the cost of smart contracts for doing some of these transactions on Ethereum. And there's a lot of energy that gets expended, and I don't mean in the proof of work sense. I mean in the coordination sense, especially, for example, if I'm doing something like a state channel, or just paying for an NFT. Right, every time you have thousands of people paying for NFTs, that's a lot of cost of coordination that gets put in there. Whereas in Pocket, if I just stake once, the network reaches consensus on that one stake, and doesn't have to again, unless I add to it or adjust something myself. I don't have to touch that again, and has in fact lowered that cost of coordination, which lowers the cost of the entire network as a whole. So we've kind of said, hey, look, you'll pay for it by staking kind of a higher amount than you would in advance, than you would like for a monthly fee. But in return, you have this asset, it doesn't get burned. And in fact, as a result, you're able to actually save money to participate.
Is the staking period fixed? And if so, how long is the staking period?
So it's you can stake for as long as you want. We have an unstaking period, which is 21 days. So if I were to stake and then unstake, it'll take 21 days for actually for me to be able to access my liquid Pocket. Got
it. Makes a lot of sense, and is very similar to how Steam used to do its feelessness. One of the things we're pioneering, one of the core innovations in Coinos, is actually transferring free transactional capacity to liquid token holders. And it's more of like a dynamic staking model where the staking is done dynamically based on the amount of resources that the network participant is consuming as they go. So you perform a transaction as a specific amount or the right amount of your tokens are staked for the fixed period of time. But so definitely love the approach, believe in the feeless approach to decentralized networks. I think the last question I want to ask you, we've already covered so much great stuff. I'm very curious to hear your feelings about having built on Cosmos. I think Cosmos was not a project that I was super familiar with. Been in the space a long time, saw it, would repeatedly see it. As we've been building out Coinos, I've actually gotten more impressed by the foresight of Cosmos, by the work that they've done, by the work that they're still doing, like their inter-blockchain communication protocol. So it's definitely an interesting thing. I think they were ahead of their time in a lot of ways. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that protocol, how you like being on that protocol now, and whether you, do you envision staying with Cosmos or not?
Yeah, great question. What's really interesting about Cosmos is that you don't necessarily have to be a Tendermint chain to plug into their ecosystem, right? So we picked Cosmos because they were by far the most battle hardened and tested kind of sovereign chain that we felt comfortable forking effectively. So we forked, using Tendermint, and kind of built our own Pocket application on top of Tendermint. It's really served its purpose to kind of get us in with a very with a functional and very well used network at this point. That said, it definitely has its downsides because Pocket is a very specific kind of a solution, and even something with Tendermint, it's a very generic and frankly, we need to have something that really fits what Pocket is trying to do. So actually what we're doing is we're actually building something called Pocket 1.0, which is something that we're building from the ground up so that we can fix some of the issues that Pokt has today, and make it even better moving forward. But frankly, Tendermint and Cosmos, for either way, we will be able to, for example, integrate IBC as an example, right? And generally, I do believe in this vision of kind of having many chains that are interconnected with various, let's say strength, right? And the way that these things interact, in the future is really, it's who knows, and that's kind of really the exciting thing. It's almost, I referenced this before, but it's almost like loot, but with blockchains. Like, you have kind of the substrate, and it's just going in so many different directions, and no one really knows where it's going to go yet. But regardless, it's very exciting. And they, like you said, they were really they had some serious vision with what they built.
All right, it was great talking to you.
I enjoyed the conversation. It was fun.